please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for attending January 28th. Selectmen's meeting, roll call, John Hodgkins here.
Joe Bailey here.
John Mullen here.
Okay, first item, everybody has an agenda? Okay, good. Minutes from the last meeting though.
Send this down the other end.
Oh, I guess we should.
Yes, you can do that, yes.
All right, so we will belay that, start with the opening of a public hearing regarding the separation of the town clerk and tax collector. For quite a number of years, it's been one person doing both jobs.
What's that?
We are suggesting
Oh, make
two people, right?
have to make a motion.
No, go ahead.
I move we open a public hearing on separation of town clerk and tax collector.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, the concept is to take a job held by, two jobs by one person and make it two separate jobs held by two separate people. All right. Anybody wish to talk first about it? The
Monkey in the middle?
Yeah.
The idea is to provide better service at no additional cost. If you look in through the warrant articles, there will be additional monies for the assessing clerk. In the past, the assessing clerk, not the, we have no assessor, okay? Avatar is our assessor, but there's no one in town that's our assessor. Assessing clerk has been a one-day job, once a week. We'd like to change it to 2 days because Laura Parker, our secretary, has been filling in graciously on her time that she should be working on selecting stuff. All right, so that would change it to 2 days per week. That's the difference in the price. Any other, anybody want to speak? Anybody in the audience?
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course.
Introduce
So,
yourself, so everybody
I'm
knows.
Kathleen Blaney, assessing clerk / old town clerk,
Right, okay.
tax collector as we speak. The problem, I mean, it's very hard to serve as tax collector, town clerk, because your main, I guess, priority is the customers at the window or the phone ringing. So in a 24-hour period, you are focused on DMV phones, and you barely have time for the tax collector side of it, which is a lot entailed. You had to have focus. If you separate the jobs, you're separating it for me to be just focusing on the assessing clerk, which goes better with the tax collector anyways. They go together better than the town clerk tax collector. I mean, it just, I think it can serve people without even raising the cost a lot more efficiently, separating the job.
Are there times when both would be in there at once?
Yeah, so she'll be the town clerk and I'll be the tax collector, so
Okay.
I'll be here 3 days out of the week with 2 assessing days and 1 tax collector day, but really, if anybody comes in with a tax collector
And the reason,
questions.
the main reason is to up the number of hours for the assessing clerk, because that's more work. Based on just the uptick in things that go on, regulations and so forth. 1 day a week is not enough, and what happens is that things that have to be done get offloaded to our secretary here to do those things. So, not that she's not capable, she is capable, but it would make more sense to add another day to provide the service to the residents of assessing clerk in the building here. They can address it. How many abatements do you have right now already?
I have 14.
14, that takes time.
Yes.
And some of the questions that come up with the tax collector, it's trying to put work in where it's supposed to be done and offload where it's being done, but shouldn't be done. I guess is the best.
Good way of putting it, yep.
So Kathleen, then mean to say that you're in here as the assessor, if I came up to pay my taxes, you'd be more than willing to take my check?
Definitely.
Okay.
I'll take off my assessing clerk hat and put on my tax collector hat, but yes. No, I would never turn anybody away,
Well, no,
like,
but I'm just.
yeah, definitely.
Seems to me like several years ago when Pam Frazier was here, doing it, same conversation that she says, I'm always behind and behind. My records are not up to speed.
Yeah.
Constantly trying to get those things like that on top of everything else. When Gwen was here, same thing, okay? She says, you know, this is more than just one day because we're so far behind because it was behind when Pam was here. She inherited it, it's still behind, so we're behind the 8 ball here. It's gonna take some time to get it fixed
It
up.
is, it's
I mean,
definitely
Those cards are constantly changing, and
Yep.
it's not just a,
There's more than just doing the tax cards, there's abatements, the senior abatement, the
Exactly.
veterans
Exception,
abatement.
yeah.
There's paperwork that go with that, there's the intent to cut type of stuff that gets involved with that too. So there's a lot of things that just, you can get swamped, particularly tax time, when people come in and rightfully so can make a request for abatement, so that causes increased workload. And if they're only here one day a week, so then some of the questions and interface goes over here, which takes away from what we would like her to do for us, okay? So it just made sense to the board that we split those two, combine the tax collector and the assessor in terms of, not combine the two, but who they are, and go from there, so.
All right, yes. Joanne.
So, trying to get a handle on this, so you have one person doing the town clerk portion of duties. And then you have one person doing the tax collecting and assessing, or assessor clerk. And the tax office collections or whatever will still be open the last Saturday of the month?
The town clerk will.
Town clerk,
Or,
And that's for
It's
the
always
car
been-
registrations,
Yeah.
dog registrations, right?
but not tax collecting? Or just she
No.
does?
well, it doesn't matter, if somebody brings a check and pay off the taxes, she can still accept.
Okay.
And they're not gonna say, no, wait until next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right.
no, we'll take the check,
We always want, we always want the money.
Yeah.
or
We'll
cash,
definitely collect it.
or cash, or credit cards, that's a fee.
So, would it be possible to have a written, explanation of the duties of each of those positions put into some kind of format for the town to observe?
Certainly could,
Yeah.
sure.
Can write up, definitely something like that.
No.
Well, the job description wouldn't change.
Well, what's the?
We have job descriptions on tax collector.
Right, so those would be the duties, so.
Those would be the duties, they wouldn't change, so you could, it's one person, we're splitting the town clerk is all by itself now, instead of town clerk / tax collector. We switched this back in 2000,
9?
Either 99,
I think it was 2009, we combined the two.
right, that's
I
what
believe that's when we
Veronica was
combined
on
it.
for.
Prior to that, now, over the years, a lot of things have changed, regulations have changed, the town has grown, budget has grown, the taxes have grown, we all know that, so, our assessments have gone up and down. I was just looking at an assessment the other day, and back in 2006, the town assessment was $198 million. In 2015, 16, it was 177 million. That's the value of the properties of the town. Your house, Prezio's, everybody owns a piece of property, what their value is. Our current value is somewhere around 183 to 186 million, so it's going back up. We haven't hit 198 yet, but that was prior to the mortgage crash of 2008. That took a big bite out of assessments. And right down the tubes. Okay. That's it.
All right. Comments from other folks? Questions?
Yeah, I have
Fire
a
away,
question.
please.
My name is Harold Illingwood. As far as the taxes go, why is it some people get their taxes cut and other people's taxes go up? Like mine, it wouldn't. My property taxes was phased at 167,000. This year our taxes are phased for 198,000. The same house, same property. Why would the taxes go up and other people's taxes go down and they're building on their houses all the time?
The value of your house is based upon the assessed value.
The assessed value was assessed for 167,000. This year it went up when he come around. This year it went up to 198,000.
Okay.
And I got the same property. Take it back. When I first got the house, I bought it for 189,900. Now I have added that it was on a half an acre of property. We've added back a few years ago another quarter of an acre or a half acre and made it a full acre, and it was still assessed at 167. Now it's assessed for 198, and other people around us that where I live, the taxes have gone down, but my taxes went up $30,000. Why?
Go ahead and you want to offer an
Because
answer.
we just had a whole new town valuation.
All right.
All right,
We
did
only,
your,
it was 5 years ago was the last one.
okay, did, the town gets us, the town assessment or your assessment is based on average prices of property around the town. They can go up and they go down. I just mentioned to you that in 2006, the assessment for the whole town was 198,000, 198 million. Then it dropped way down to almost 160 million, just because the values of property, people weren't buying them, the prices, selling similar properties, that's what your assessment is really based on. Similar properties of you that have sold, and that, I can't tell you the whole criteria of the assessor, we could certainly do that. But your assessment is one thing, and if you're then they will look at your property and say, okay, maybe because you added an acreage, I don't know, we'd have to look at that. Have you filed an abatement for your taxes?
No, I
You should
didn't know
do that.
nothing about it, but,
Okay. Is your
we got-
are your taxes, do you have any special taxes like veterans tax or a senior tax or something like that? Has that changed?
no,
Nothing has changed.
nothing has changed. And as a matter of fact, we get a hold of people that does the assessing on the property.
The people with the what, I'm sorry?
That does come around assessing the
Oh,
property.
Avatar, okay, yeah.
We come around, we got a hold of them. And the guy that never come anywhere near my house to assess it, nowhere near it. And when we got a hold of him, he come out and he says, we assessed the property for what everybody's property sells for in that area.
Yeah,
Now, the guy beside of me, his property's only 140-something thousand. Another guy right in the same area, Joe knows where I live. But my taxes have gone right $30,000, gone up $30,000.
Assessed value went up 30,000.
your assessed value went up 30,000.
Yeah. It was down, now it just went
I can't
skyrocketing.
answer why that is, that's why there's an abatement process. An abatement process means you can test that assessment. And there's a process that you go through, you come to the town, you set up an appointment with the assessor, you present your case, they review it, they make a decision. That's not the final decision, if you don't like that, you can go further up the line. But,
You just heard us earlier, she's got 14 already that people like that want to do, have an abatement on it. You're welcome to do that as well, anytime you want to. You're allowed to do that.
Good, I'll get a hold of her and get that
I
paperwork.
can grab it, actually. It's
No,
going to the office.
You should do that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I mean, our assessment went up almost $20,000 still.
Yeah, I know,
Nothing's changed.
you don't live too far from where I do.
Okay, but also you have to stop and consider back when they done this, you know, a few years ago, okay? We have the school part of it now, your overall assessed value for the whole town has gone up because they have the school now. That adds value, but they have kids in school or not, makes no difference. We have, you know, that's where it comes from.
But the thing of it is, why should, the guy doesn't come around
Right.
and he just sends you a bill for your taxes?
Well, now,
Shouldn't he be able to come around and look at it?
so,
He called and made 2 appointments and he never showed up.
see, that's my, and I'm looking on the opposite side because my fault, okay? I could contest our assessed value as well, because when he comes in the yard, he just goes like that. He doesn't come in the house, because Tammy has a licensed daycare, and if the kid's like that, you can't have people, unless it's, other people there, just wander through your house. They have to be escorted in through your house while the kids are there.
My
So
wife-
we've never done that, so they just go on based on the history for the last 16 years, what they've seen, and that's what it goes by.
And when we bought the house, he come around, and we was let in the house to see everything. And this time, he called, made an appointment, but he never showed up.
No, that's not right. Do the,
Right, when you file your abatement, you would expect a visit from the assessor, so that you can go inside and take a look.
Yeah, my wife's home all the time.
Yeah.
You want me to go over? Are you done? Because I can go
Go
over
ahead.
with you over here if you want.
Yeah,
That
I'm
way
all
you can show
done.
you. No,
I
I'm
just
not
have-
saying,
I
that's
just-
not what, I know that's horrible, you're all done, that's not what I meant.
I just have another thing to bring up, but it's not on the taxes.
Oh, do you want to go ahead? Okay, so I just wanted to show you exactly what you need to do. Are you gonna be around tomorrow? And tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Well, I think, all right.
Want you, is it Linda? Okay, have Linda come up, I'll print out the tax card.
All right,
That way we can go over it if you
For the
want,
record,
or how are we
my
gonna
taxes
do
are
it?
going up too.
That way we can fill it out and see how it goes.
yeah, and then being the third largest taxpayer in town, that must hurt.
It does indeed.
Yeah, I feel bad for you, John.
Thank you.
Make sure you have-
All right, other comments about our
So we can look at.
tax collecting, tax assessing, town clerk?
I mean, our assessments.
I think we have to leave this open for an hour.
When she comes out, we can work on it together.
We do.
So if you want
We
to
can
volunteer,
conduct
and then
business.
we
All
can
right,
share it.
all right, so,
So you want more on a few minutes, it's like that?
yeah,
We'll have
if
questions.
nothing else for the moment. If you think of something, please let us know and we'll stop the regular business and go back.
So I would go back.
Continue on.
No, but I need to get something, but I can, I gotta do the
I'd like
audit.
to do the minutes from the meeting of
So that'd be at the end. So where's the?
January 14th.
Tracy, can I see it for a second?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes of, January 14th, 2019 as
Public participation.
transcribed.
Any other business?
I'll second.
I've already read them, so
Maybe
I'm
business
ready.
and then
All right, all in favor?
the. Okay,
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
okay, I'll let Linda know though,
I will
okay?
have, I tried to call him,
When are we opening?
and hit my cell phone, so.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'll be here,
That's
never.
another thing.
It's still, John, that's what happens.
Hour.
When it's been reassessed in 5 years, something's gonna
Well,
change.
and there are a lot of factors that change your assessment. A lot of factors. Nature of your property,
Alright, tell Linda to come see
whether
me
you've
then.
done
Okay.
anything to not, if you added to your property, if you have vacant land on it. It's all changes, all changes.
Watch out, $37,000 house went up for that room up on this porch.
It's a nice porch though.
It is, but
The audit agreement.
There are 2 originals, so I have to sign them both, and it's just the last page that they're waiting for.
Just John?
I believe so, yes.
Good.
By state law, towns have to have an audit on a regular basis. We have Vashon Cloutier, who's been doing our audit for a number of years. A short credit to Laura. The auditors would, years ago, would come, be here most of the week. They'd have a laundry list of what was not being done correctly.
Paragraphs.
Next year, they'd come back, another 3 or 4 days, saying laundry list, stuff has not been corrected. Since Laura has come, first Laura, how many days do they spend, and what happened to that long laundry list?
They're here approximately 2.5 days.
Okay, instead of a week?
There's no more list.
Yeah.
No, they,
When I first came and started, I can remember they used to be here, these 10 days.
Thank you, Laura.
No. When does the audit happen?
February.
February.
Good. Do you know when it is?
Huh?
Did you ask when it's?
Yeah, Laura says it
Okay.
happens in February.
should be the 19th is what they're scheduled to be here.
I just didn't know when it happened.
February the audit.
So you're signing the agreement for it to happen?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I
It
thought.
just basically says what their responsibility will be to come and.
Because then you have to sign off after. Gotta deal with auditors tomorrow.
Alright, I'm doing this, town property bids.
Okay, so we had 2 pieces of property up for bid. One on Spruce Road and one on Pleasant Valley Road. Spruce Road is a vacant lot and Pleasant Valley Road has the capped off foundation that we've been having some problems with. This one I think is the only one for Spruce Road. These don't really, this one says Pleasant Valley, but these do
I'm
not.
sorry.
But I know for sure that one is, and I'm pretty sure these are all Pleasant Valley because of who they came from. But they don't specifically say. So, which one are you doing, Spruce?
Spruce.
So this is map 4, lot 51.37 acres. On Spruce.
So what is owed on the taxes for this Spruce Road one?
I was asking 2,700 in back taxes. What's up?
Okay, 51 Spruce Road, so it is map 4, lot 51, our bid is $2,600. You get the names? I think so. The
Yeah.
names? Yeah,
Yeah.
Peter Ciccolini, Lakeshore Drive, Middleton, that's the one, 2,600.
So what are we owed with, for taxes? 27?
27, yep.
Well, I just want, I don't think you wanna vote on that until,
Yeah, I was gonna say
Okay.
the same thing. Just in case don't accept it, just read it, and then, cause just in case any of these go to that property, cause they don't specifically say. I don't think they do, but could be wrong.
It's an old Johnny Carson thing.
Carnac says.
Yeah.
If you open one up, I'll open one up.
No, you open one at a time, one at a time.
Bid over. Moving on.
I miss that guy. What's that?
Johnny Carson.
Yeah, I miss that. Different time.
So this is map 9, lot 1-1, Pleasant Valley Road, 10.33 acres, and there's 8,000 due in taxes.
Okay, so we're not doing them all for one property, just,
Well, you're gonna make sure those are for the other
Okay,
property unless you have another one.
okay, January 21st, 2019, I'd like to place a property bid of $20,002 for the 10.33 acres on Pleasant Valley Road, as shown on map 9, lot 1, sub 1. Submitted James G. Brown, Route 153, Middleton. So that's the other piece of property. What was the amount on that?
8,000?
8,000, this
So
is
just to be
20,000.
clear, anything that we get above what is due must be sent back to the prior owners. So you're not profiting as a town, just wanna make sure that's clear. Cause you
Follow that.
can't, because it's within the 3
Follow that.
years.
I followed it.
And that there's
I was listening
possibly,
to
you
two
have to
different
announce that
comments.
there's possibly
Yeah, I was thinking something.
squatters that could be there, but we don't know. Every time we've checked, there's nobody on the premises, but we
Any
never
longer,
know.
any longer.
Correct.
Okay. This again is map 9, lot 1, sub 1. Bid amount, there's no date on it, but, you want me to add a date? No?
I brought it in on the day it was due, so that's fine.
Okay. Bid amount $13,525 from James Keegan and Roxanne Tufts Keegan. Alright? So, what day did this come in?
Check the envelope. I think I date the envelopes. As they come in.
122.19.
And what was the bid for that one?
$2.22, no, 22.
13,525.
15, 5,
No, 13.
525.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got it. I'm just not typing fast enough.
This is 9-1. Sorry, lot 9, lot 1, sub 1.
That's the right one.
911.
Like my letter opener?
Yeah, you look dangerous there.
Is that permissible?
Yes.
That looks like mine.
You used to have
And you lost.
Short story,
Last sidewalk.
years ago, I attended a West Point football game at West Point in New York, okay, Army football. I used to have another leather than they have it now. Okay, this is from Janet Kaylard. Laura, Ken and I wish to put a bid on the land you advertise as map 9, lot 1, I guess it's sub 1. Our bid is $8,000. Thank you, Janet Kaylard. And it's dated the 22nd. Does it matter it's not signed?
Did I not sign it? I know it's mine.
Yeah, that might be me. You did, it's invisible ink.
Are there any more? I can put this away.
Good job, Bill. Very intimidating. It's a little nervous.
Another short story. I spent a lot of years teaching middle school, both around here and down in New York. I also served as assistant principal, make my rounds around the building. I found a student with a knife fully as big as mine, carving his initials into one of the beautiful wooden doors. And I made the mistake of saying, "Give me that knife." Fortunately, he did give it to me the correct way, not in my stomach or something. All right, this bid is pertaining to the parcel on Pleasant Valley Road, map 9, lot 1, sub 1. As a resident and property owner that abuts this parcel on 3 sides, I'm aware of its current condition. I do not only have the desire to see this lot cleaned up, but I also have a vested interest in doing so, as I feel it could become a potential hazard to my current property if not done properly and completely. Because of this, I am offering you the asking price of $8,000 plus associated fees. Joseph Varga, Pleasant Valley Road, Middleton. I am a bit confused by associated fees. You know,
Your bid, when you put the bid out, it says asking price plus fees
okay, so
associated with
it's
the deed.
fees that are associated with
With
that.
that, yeah.
All right, not with the cleanup or
No.
anything,
No.
just with the actual deed. Okay. Anyone wish to talk about their bid as it pertains to here? Reasoning behind it, and open for any additional comments. Joseph?
I'll tell you right now, looking at it, living, like I said, I border on 3 sides. There is a confusing plot line that goes with that lot. There's radiuses, it's not a square lot. And looking at the amount of debris, not only in the building, but outside the building, I'm looking somewhere north of $20,000 to clean it up, so.
Just out of curiosity, besides people who put in bids, anybody know where this is?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
My house.
All right, okay. 25 words or less, how have we been involved?
We have had some unauthorized
Yes, you have.
people utilizing the building, actually for some time. We finally, I believe, we took care of that here maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. We actually, they actually put power in there. We finally got that out. It's been disconnected, so there is a meter on the, but I mean, there's a line, but that was pulled. The police had patrolled that. We've been up there a couple times. We haven't seen them since. I don't know if they've been up there, but.
The insulation's knocked off the window for the last week, so.
What's that?
The insulation's been knocked out of the window for the last week, so I don't think they've been there.
Yeah, well, we knocked the window out. We could have done that too. We were thinking about flattening the building, which we would have had a right to do that, but soon as we discovered, unfortunately, we didn't realize that there was power there. You just can't go in and flatten it without turning it off. So then we had to deal with that, which we got resolved pretty quickly. So it is pretty pretty bad. Okay.
I'll put my 2 cents worth in here. Although I'm not the highest bidder, I do believe that the highest bidder, you will have issues with getting that property cleaned up. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Is the highest bidder here?
No,
But again, you don't have to choose the highest bidder or the lowest or whatever. You do what's best for the town, because you will not benefit from the extra funds.
I just ask a question? I believe the property that you have, that 10 acres was originally part of
That
that
is a
property.
true statement, and somewhere in that 10 acres, there's an
Yeah.
Indian buried, I don't know where.
Yeah.
Haven't found him
It
yet.
was, I believe Bob Weiss owned the property, all of it, all the 100, however many acres you have, and then a number of years ago, he,
I was told it was a veteran, is it an Indian burial or a veteran?
It's an Indian burial.
Indian burial, oh, pretty.
so yeah, so he had that subdivided
Well,
into 10 acres, and then he sold the other remaining property, so.
From the town's point of view, a couple, 3 years ago, we had a very small piece of property that was landlocked, but it had a dilapidated building on it. It was considered a health hazard. Town had to go in and clean it up before anybody would even consider it. So I'm pleased that there's people willing to take this as is, but you're both correct. It is a tremendous job to do something. If the something is tear it down, then you go haul it off. If it's to rehab it, the walls, I think, are cement.
Outside walls are, I don't know what I haven't really walked through the building that much.
Yeah, you
I know
don't
the
wanna walk
outside
through
more.
the building.
I heard that.
Okay. Cinder block roof pitched or shed?
It's probably a 1-2 pitch. It's just, it's tarp over it. The roof is collapsed on one side. It needs to be either torn down or gutted, or you could use a foundation, I suppose. There is other debris on that property, you are correct, there's a vehicle,
There's probably
there's
100 plus
all
tires
kinds
on
of
the
stuff up
backside.
there. Yeah.
So,
That you guys probably didn't
So-
see.
oh, I'm familiar type. So I have a question for you. If you were to get that property, would you put it back into that other,
As of right now, my lawyer is telling me not to because I can't get a clean title on it yet. Until
Right, so-
once I get a clean title, I would gladly
Merge it
break
back
it.
and merge it into your property.
so something to consider for you too as
But
well?
until I can get a clean title, I'm not.
Right. No, right, no, I definitely hear what you're saying now.
Do you want me to go over them again? Oh, another comment from somebody?
The practice of the town has been to give abutters the primary consideration for properties.
Yes. That has been the case in the past, yes. All right, so looks like we're gonna consider this one first. So I've got one from James Brown, $20,002. I have one from Roxanne and Jim Keegan, $13,525. And I have another one, Janet Kalar, $8,000. I guess there's 4 roads to live. And the last one, 8,000 from Joseph Vargo. All right? So, whoever said it is correct. We don't have to take the highest one. We don't have to take any if we choose not to. Any thoughts?
My opinion is that we have in the past given the abutters the first option. I really don't see where we wanna sell it to get back the money, honestly. I mean, we got a lot invested just going down there, chasing after the police department and everything else that we've done, so. I don't wanna give them any benefit to it as well, so.
Well, tell us, choose it.
I'm sorry.
How much money is owed on it?
8,000.
Okay, so I don't want anybody to think, gee, if we take 20,000, the town's gonna clear 12.
No,
We're
the
not going
12
to.
would go back to the trust, which, I mean, and I don't, whoever you choose, don't want that on the record.
Right.
But if you give them 12,000, they could come back and start fighting for their property, because now we just gave them the money to buy.
So, can I just,
Technically.
my 2 cents,
Just saying.
I understand mine is the next highest bid. I have no issue giving the consideration to the abutters. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
As long as my husband can hunt down there.
Jan, you and Ken,
I'll give you my number at the
what do you
end.
think?
I don't care.
We put the bid in to find a piece of property in town because we're looking to sell our house and downsize. So we were looking to build. And there was one property we were looking at that we found out you guys just took. So we wouldn't be able to do anything with that for 3 years anyway.
Is that correct, Laura?
No.
It's not. If
Well, I
you,
told-
No, because we just took this one.
Yeah, this one's just taking a minute.
Yeah.
We just have to, it takes time.
Oh, okay.
Like I have to do a 90-day to the owner saying I will start to post it in 90, like there's a process, but it just takes longer than just
We're
putting out
looking
the
to
property
sell,
we've owned
we're
forever.
looking to stay in town,
right,
but we want to build.
So, that's still an option to her then? That's
Yeah.
how you were, was
I thought we had, I
that your
thought
first
that,
option?
the one that I had talked to her about earlier, it was still on the MLS listing, and we found out that it's not, it couldn't be sold by a realtor. So I thought we had to wait 3 years before you guys
You
took it.
don't, that family is trying to get that back, but so wasn't this one for a while.
Okay,
So not to say that they couldn't, but I'm just saying, we do
Either
not
one of
technically
them.
have to wait.
either one of them would be fine.
everybody understand why we're talking about 3 years? I don't wanna go into great discourse here, but if you don't pay your taxes year 1, you get charged interest. If you don't pay your taxes again in year 2, more interest. If you don't pay your taxes in year 3, then it becomes tax deeded to the town. Okay? At that point, the town can sell it and, I guess, recoup all the monies. We could sell it sooner, right, as long as the people, there's no profit made by the town.
Right, we couldn't profit. But
Right.
if we sell it, we have to make sure that they're well aware that we're gonna put it out for sale. So they have the option to still repurchase it.
And all that has already been
Yeah.
done, okay. All right,
So how much longer do we have to wait now that they've been notified that we're putting it up for sale? Do we have to wait before it goes up for sale?
Which parcel are you talking about, Pleasant Valley or the
Right.
one
That
that
was
Janet?
the other one Janet was looking at.
The other one, we could probably do whenever. We
Okay.
could actually, yeah.
Okay. So, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you, taking that in consideration, if that was your first choice and you now have another option. No, I'm not trying to stiff you on something like that,
I
but
know.
I think the abutter, I think I would like to go with the abutters, deal, cause I know he's gonna take care of it. And it's always been a long-term thing to do that, so.
would you make that in the form of a motion?
I would make that into a
and so
motion.
forth?
Well, the other thing is, what just made me leery on that property was the fact that there may be an Indian burial ground over there, because you can't build on that.
Yeah, you have to find it first.
Right.
There is one, it's in the old cemetery book, I actually looked,
Right.
I was like curious.
And with my life, it would be right where we want the house.
I mean,
You have bad
I'll,
juju.
pull up this.
Yeah,
There is,
exactly.
and there is an old septic and a well on that property somewhere too, that I don't know exactly.
I don't think the septic's been used for a while.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Would it be safe to say, Mr. Wagner, if you find that well, it'll either be properly capped or filled in?
Correct. It's actually, I believe it's just a drilled well, so it should be capped over as it is.
I guess I'm thinking of, what?
You're thinking of an old town.
No, I'm thinking of, I believe it was Texas.
Yeah,
Child just fell down a
Just
old
keep
well.
that in
yeah.
mind.
Everything will be.
I will.
Yeah, thank you.
Alright,
Taken care of.
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from Joseph Varga, for the, 110 Pleasant Valley Road for the, map 9, lot 1, sub division 1 on Pleasant Valley Road, for the, cost of, $8,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
We got one more.
now,
So now we know that there's only one.
Right.
now, Laura, before we finish this, do you have anything you wish to say to them, like, come see me in 3 years, or 2 days, or you'll contact them, or?
Yeah, I'll.
I can
I'll
pay you tonight when I leave.
Okay, refresh your memory. Peter Ciccolini, lot 51, it's the lot on 51 Spruce Road. Map 4, lot 51. Bid for this one is $2,600, and it is the only bid. What's owed on it?
2,700? 2,700.
All right, so no worry about giving money back. All right, any thoughts? Mr. Ciccolini, on the butter?
Yes,
Good?
You gonna merge them?
I haven't decided yet on that one. I merged the other two. Those, because one of them was, I think, .19 or something like that.
That's where you put your,
No, it's across the street from that, actually. We own the house,
Kinda hard to merge that one.
we own the house across the street from it too, so we abut on the side and across the
Right.
street.
Question,
Yes.
if we make a merger too, does it mean he has to plow the road in front of it?
that's right, absolutely.
Half the road goes through the property, by the way.
What's that?
I said half of Spruce Road goes actually through the property, but
Most
we all know
properties over
the,
there.
we all know the
don't
tail
go
of down by the
through.
lake, yeah. Oh, I know, yeah, it's everywhere.
Another short story. A number of years ago, I bought a property not too far from there, over on Pine Road. And I was raking the lawn after I bought it, trying to clean it up. Gentleman across the street came over and said, "Mr. Hotchkiss, do you know you're raking my lawn?" He owns like 5 feet because the road was put in wrong. And I stopped and said, "Hello, here's your rake if you'd like to rake." And he says, "Oh, no thanks," turned around, went back home. So I still got the rake.
When I
I
first
think
moved
the
up
rake-
here, it
the
was on
leaf
Birch
right
Road.
back.
I had a house on Birch Road when I first moved up in '86, and literally I owned property across the street on
Right,
Birch
yeah.
Road.
All right, any other discussion from anyone? Right. Good evening, if you'd like to sit, we got a chair up here. All right,
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid for $2,600 for map 4, lot 51 on Spruce Road.
Second the motion.
the second two, Peter Ciccolini, all right? Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And again, at some point, Laura will see you.
Thank you,
I'll email you what you need. Okay?
thank you, Laura,
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right, next please, abatement request.
Okay, so, this is an abatement for a hardship. I'll let you just read it, but this is Avatar's recommendation, which is not actually a it is, but it's not, you'll
It's a
read it.
decision, right?
Well, no, cause he can't really decide on a hardship.
It's up to us to decide.
Does it mention who this is, or is it just mentions the property?
That's the last name of the gentleman.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna read the first part. Dated January 10th. Dear board members, enclosed, please find my recommendation. This is from the assessor, okay? For hardship under the last name of Glidden. Here's his, not his decision, his comments. This is on 50 Kings Highway, map 9, lot 11. The taxpayer, last name of Glidden, has filed for abatement on this 1.9 acre parcel improved with a Cape-style home built in 1860, assessed at $120,400. The taxpayer has filed for abatement based upon poverty or inability to pay. In this instance, the decision to grant an abatement or not lies solely with the board, that would be us. I must give some history on the matter for the decision to be fairly considered. As part of the 2018 revaluation process, all exemptions and credits must be updated in the review process to ensure those receiving exemptions and credits still qualify. The taxpayer has been receiving an exemption. Since the last review, 5 years, unfortunately the taxpayer's spouse has passed. This caused a change in the income and assets limits for the consideration of the exemption. The taxpayer's total income exceeds the limit by $700. I don't know if that's per month or per year. Total
What
income
is
must be
it?
for a year. The taxpayer's total income exceeds the limit by $700.
Yes.
Must be per
Per year.
year.
Yes.
And subsequently no longer qualifies. After having received a greatly reduced assessment for calculation of tax burden, the loss of the exemption would create a large change in one's finances. I must advise that the decision of the board may set a precedent for other taxpayers in similar situations. It is possible that a change may be adopted for income and asset limits going forward, and the taxpayer can reapply if that occurs. So, his income exceeds the limits, and the assessor is cautioning us, if we accept this, it could set a precedent for other people. If we don't accept it, this gentleman or madam could apply in the future if changes are made in income and assets. Okay?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Everything's done on case by case.
Right, but because Jonathan called me on this one, but what Avatar's saying was they approved this one, say,
Setting the
you
precedent.
can't come in and say the same thing, or the next person, that's what they're saying, and they're like, you know,
I realize
with
that.
14 abatements in front of them, plus this one, this is an additional. He's like, you already have an overwhelming abatement because of our assessment value going up, so that's all they're saying.
That's quite a
Any
bit.
thoughts?
I think the overwhelming, unfortunately, I feel bad for residents that get into these situations. There's people that are, some people are struggling, and I understand that. But in this particular case, unless we change our exemptions, and we have several, I believe we can change. We have a veterans exemption, we would have to change those, so if we so desired. And we would have to look at the impact of that on the taxes, which means, which is not necessarily a bad thing, that if you change an exemption number, depending on the number, we could get a number, how much would that impact everybody else's to pick up the slack? So, I sympathize with, I believe it's Mr. Griffin in this situation, but I think if we, in this particular case, at this time, approve the abatement, I think it would set us up without taking a look at maybe the abatements down the road. So I wouldn't, unfortunately, not be in favor of that.
I agree, I would not be in favor of it.
I make a motion that we deny his hardship
Request.
abatement based on the fact of setting a precedent, and that he can file at another date if we so choose to change the abatement amount.
Okay.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. John, instead of new business, I'm gonna take you now, milfoil state contract? That's
Yeah.
what you wanted?
This is the This is the contract from, this isn't the contract from the firm that's going to do the milfoil mitigation. This is the contract for the grant.
Okay?
And we've signed these every year, and I've got these full of all kinds of stickies for where you're supposed to sign, and all it does is say, okay, we agree to the terms of the grant, you'll do ABC, you've signed these before, we have an agreement with general provisions, and all these little ditties that go after it. Then we have, most of it is then we have a certificate of authority. So when you sign, which you have, the chairman has in the past, then it has to be notarized, then a selectman has to sign a certificate of authority saying you are the selectman and you are the chair, then that has to be notarized, and then it's sent into, and the exhibits on here tell the nature of the contract that's going to be formed. Doesn't say we have to go into the contract, this just is a formal thing of, and this would be the total grant. And it's two ways. There's a grant. This is the herbicide one that we are choosing to go with. This is the diver dash one. So the total grant between the two is $5,738. So
We discussed this already. I think the one, I guess the more preferred method is a bit more expensive, but it might last 2 years instead of 1 year. Does that sound right?
it might be, it's an experimental treatment that has proven thus far to be very successful in eliminating the milfoil, not just reducing it, but just totally wiping it out. So,
Anybody familiar with milfoil? You can reach right down in the water and you can pull it out and it grows right back.
Was it the herbicide that you said that was going, that appears to be eliminating it?
Yes.
As opposed to the diver?
Yes.
yes, the divers have done okay. We have, since I've been working on this, I don't know when I started doing this paperwork, probably 5-6 years ago, I don't know. First thing I got involved, we did a herbicide treatment. And at that time, the reason we did that is we had over 22 acres of milfoil infestation across the lake. Mostly, not where you are, most of it was in Pinkham Cove and the other cove on the other side, and that's where it always has been. Well, now it's kind of spread around a little bit, but we're now down to 11.3 acres. The diving is difficult in trying to get it all.
How do they do it?
They put on their scuba gear,
Right.
and they have a big suction vacuum cleaner, and they dive down into the silty bottom. They have to grab each plant by the root and pull it out and make sure none of the milfoil floats around and it's sucked up into the, it's like hunting for treasure.
Gold miners.
Gold miner. So it's, it is less expensive, but it's not as effective. And I've known about this herbicide treatment for 4 years because I was involved with a committee up in Concord concerning, for a better word, exotic weeds and so forth and so on. So with the consultation with the state that really directs all the treatments that we do on all of lakes had to do with milfoil mitigation. It was felt that we should try this, and there will be a meeting on February 16th that will go over the herbicide, what it's about, what it does, what it doesn't do, plus other things that have to do with milfoil and other aquatic species within the lake. But the most important thing is for DES will be here to enlighten us and answer all your questions you have on the herbicide, because I'm sure people are concerned when they hear herbicide, what it'll do to the environment, what it'll do to swimming, what it'll do and all that kind of stuff. So
How do they put the herbicide in the 11 acres and not the other 100 acres?
you know, it's, I
It
don't
seems
know,
like
but
it's spread everywhere.
they have a I think the way they do it is it's like a big spreader type of thing, or nozzles that come out and they go over it's not a spreader, they go over a particular area and they go this way and they go around this way and they go around. My understanding is the herbicide sits there and then it slowly floats down onto the plant. So that would seem to me, although it would seem to me that it would be more effective because you get all the plants instead. I mean, they didn't get all the plants. We had plants come back after we spent money pulling, and that's not necessarily the fact that the pulling was done bad. It's just a very pervasive plant that's just hard to get rid of.
All right, comments, anyone? Yes.
And I did a little research too, for the benefit of those of us that might not be able to make that meeting. Herbicides previously, they used something like 1,000 parts to up to 5,000 parts of herbicide to the area. This new one, they only use 10 to 50 parts of unit of herbicide, and it's selective. It does not harm the native plants. It's selective, and it is a systemic one. So it's taken in by that particular plant, and it kills that plant and not the native plants around it. And
But it's twice as expensive, and the reason it is, it's a proprietary recipe, for a better word.
Thank you, but that's no.
Mel? Yes, Peter.
Just a quick question, John. You said we're down to roughly 12 acres of it. Is this treatment to hit all 12 acres, or is it just a portion of it?
There, theoretically, it's gonna hit all the spots. The state goes out periodically, probably 2 or maybe 3 times during the year to survey where they see milfoil. Now, is this a foolproof system? Absolutely not. What they do is they get in a boat, kayak, whatever they do, and they have a GPS clicker. And they go and say, okay, there's a plant, there's a plant, there's a plant, there's a plant. So where the infestation, we have made progress in those 2 coves, but it's still, because they're very shallow, they don't get a lot of wind movement in there, so it's prime environment for that weed to grow. So certainly they'll be concentrating in that area, but we have some areas up by the town beach. We have some back in the town beach, which they'll have to get into somehow. I mean, some of the water, when the lake is full, is only that deep. Over where you are, there's spots by the beach on Lake Shore, and that, I think, has to do with increased boat traffic through the ramp. There was some over on Eau Claire that we didn't even see last year, that it was like a carpet. But it was maybe, I don't know, 60 by 60, but that's still an infestation. What's occurring though is we have more on the lake. There are, and I don't want to take up your time here, but there's more watercraft that go in and out of those coves, which stir the stuff up, and it will drift out. Some of the larger motoring vessels can go in there at pretty good clips with some pretty good sized motors that can chop it up. I can tell you every Monday morning on my property, which I live on the southeast of the lake, I have to rake up, you wouldn't believe, and it's not milfoil, but it's a lot of weeds. So that's probably contributed a lot, but we have knocked it down pretty good. So maybe this treatment has been very, very successful with tests by the EPA, been approved by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Service and Fish and Game. So, and I think Agricultural Department was involved with that also. So, and it's been tested in the state so far for the last 2 years, and the last 2 years there was no reoccurring of the milfoil in the areas that it was treated. So why not? Let's give it a shot.
Might point out that the grant award for the herbicide is higher than the grant award for the other one.
Well, because it's more money.
Right.
What's the percentage they give us?
The state provides a 25% grant of the total cost. So we pay 75, the state pays 25. Used to be 35, but don't have enough new boat registrations to take care of that, so.
All right. More comments? All right, are you ready? Okay, motion?
To accept the contract.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, here we go. I'll see how quickly I can sign this
It'll
stuff.
take a 10-minute recess.
It has to be notarized by a notary.
So before you go on to, old business, you've
Right.
gotta go do your warrant, recommend or not recommend, cause that's an action.
Okay.
You know, I didn't put it on there last minute. Missed it.
You missed it. What were you doing?
I don't know. Something, I'm sure.
Non-tax.
We changing any numbers?
In the what?
Are we changing any numbers?
We
I don't
might,
get past the warrant article first.
we might.
This is 28.
Is it, let me ask you a question, is it something you're going up or down on?
I'm not gonna say until we do it.
I'm asking.
Reserve your questions for the time when, wherever we decide.
You better tell me before 8 o'clock.
Well, I'm
Is the
sorry.
bachelor on?
Yes, Joe has to get home and watch, and so don't I.
The bachelor?
Yes.
Watch it on TV.
Joe needs to be home so we can eat supper.
Watch it on TV.
Get Gold Rush or something like that.
Yeah, that's what he needs to be watching.
I'm sorry, there's so many stickies for Vincent.
No, those were the job.
I already have.
I didn't get your little pointing stickers to anyone about it.
I just gave him the email of the bigger one.
I put them all on
And
there.
then tomorrow I'll be like, he didn't sign this one, he
You
didn't
did
sign
sign
this
this one, you didn't sign that one.
January. We up here too, hold on.
I think he signed his life away.
Home loan doesn't take that much.
Right. Slip a blank check in there, you never notice.
You do it, gonna buy a new car?
So either Joe or I have to sign the certificate of authority, John, not you.
Printed name. Right.
If you mess it up, I have extra,
Now I remember signing that
yeah,
last
I have
time.
blank copies
I
if
don't
you
think you
mess
said
it
that
up.
one, Joe. I think we said it.
Printed name, person, signed. Okay. Does
Stop
somebody else
it.
have it? It says,
I make extra copies just in case.
Because this is one of those where the chairman signs and then you guys sign that
Yeah.
he signed.
so as not to keep people waiting, let's check this last one right after the meeting, so we sign it correctly, okay?
Okay.
Otherwise, it's keeping people waiting. All right, next item.
The warrant articles.
Here we
It's
go.
on your list, what articles It's been an hour since the last we said that meeting in the town clerk as well. So,
Oh, so, motion to close the public hearing. Seven,
Oh, did we close it? Oh,
We can,
I
it's been an
don't.
hour.
we can now.
Oh, okay, I make a motion, we close the public hearing on, hearing for separation of town clerk and tax collector.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. In order for warrant articles to appear on the budget, on the town meeting, they have to be either recommended or not recommended by the Board of Selectmen, unless it's a petition. Then it has to be recommended or not recommended by the Budget Committee. Keep in mind that the Budget Committee's recommendation is first brought to the floor during the actual town meeting, all right? So, Laura, I didn't say what number one's gonna be, what about the other ones, of all the money appropriations? We have to do those as well?
No, you're just doing 10 forward, just 9's on there because it's on the paper.
Okay, here we go. Article number one, has to be number one because it requires a 2/3 vote.
Number one in the town meeting.
They're gonna be moved around once they put the
Right,
new
right
order
now,
in.
it's,
So
if
it's
you have a
Article-
copy, it's number 10,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Note, passage of this article shall override the 10% limitation imposed on this appropriation due to the non-recommendation of the Budget Committee. In other words, if the
That's-
Budget Committee says no, but you, the voters, say yes, it will, because of the size of this override exceed the 10% rule. Okay?
We've not gotten the budget committee's recommendation, I did that so I don't forget I have to do it if you said no. That's
Okay.
all that's in there for right now.
Alright. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,700,000 for the construction and furnishing of a new highway facility, with $1,300,000 to come from the issuance of bonds or notes in accordance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize municipal officials to issue and negotiate such bonds and notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and to accept such grants and other revenues as may be available, and to obtain $400,000 from the fund balance. 2/3 majority vote required. All right? So we do it first because the voting has to stay open for an hour by ballot. I'm talking about on Saturday, March 16th. Okay? Recommend? Not recommend. I recommend. Okay.
So all recommend?
And then there'll be the ones for the police and the highway and so forth. And then we go to number, well, it's number 11 here. I'm not sure what number it'll actually be when we get there.
Yeah.
Okay? Here we go. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate sum of $400,000 from the fund balance to be placed in the Highway Department Building Capital Reserve Fund. Majority vote required. This article will be null and void if Article 1 passes. Okay? So, first of all, do we recommend it?
Recommend.
All right. Here's the big one, $1,700,000. 1.3 million would come from issuance of bonds. 400,000 or 0.4 million would come from fund balance. If that fails, then we're suggesting to take the 400,000 from fund balance and put it in the highway building capital reserve fund for future use, all right? Next one, number 12. Now we're back to more normal stuff. Yes.
Question, John.
Yeah.
Weren't you given some advice about changing the verbiage of that last sentence about the null and void?
Actually, I got two recommendations. One, leave it as is, or the front of it could say, this article will be voted on if and only if the other one does not pass. So they said either way is fine. I know Jack Savage just asked me to check into it. Jack Savage is our moderator in the, okay? Next one, number 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $200,000 for the purpose of road construction and paving of various roads in town. Non-lapsing appropriation pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral 6, and will not lapse until December 31st, 2023, whichever is sooner. All right?
Recommend.
Good, recommend. Next one. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Highway Department Building Capital Reserve Fund. Recommend?
Recommend.
Okay. Next, this is number 14 if you're following along. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the milfoil invasive aquatic species capital reserve fund, established for the purpose of treating exotic milfoil and other exotic aquatic weeds. Okay,
Recommend.
all right, okay? We're going all right? Too fast? Okay. Number 15. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be added to the SCBA capital reserve fund. That is self-contained breathing apparatus. Those who've been around a while might call it scuba gear, except it's not scuba. All right, if you've been in the military, it's the OBAs, sort of. Except the OBAs use the canister and these use actual tanks. It's what the firefighters use when they go in to fight a fire and they don't want to breathe all the smoke in. All right, we're good? Thank you. 16. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the revaluation capital reserve fund. So each year we put money in so that we can reevaluate your taxes again. Okay?
Recommend.
Okay, recommend, all right. Next, To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 to be added to the natural or man-made disasters capital reserve fund. All right? Do that each year. We've been blessed without having any man-made disasters or natural. Okay. Next, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the fire department addition capital reserve fund. All right? Okay.
Recommend.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,500 for the purpose of purchasing 5 Motorola APX 4000 digital radios. This is for the fire department.
Yeah.
Yes, recommend?
Yep.
All right. Number 20, everybody's awake? All right, here we go. Ears might pick up on this one. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $4,000 for the purpose of researching the feasibility of hiring a town administrator. That is not the same as hiring one. We would spend a year studying it. Okay,
Recommend.
all right, recommend,
I don't recommend.
all right. Remember with any of these, if you don't spend all the money, we don't spend it all, that's okay, okay? 21,
What was the vote on that?
recommend,
2 to 1.
recommend, recommend,
Okay,
recommend, not
okay,
recommend.
Okay, I just
Two to
wanted
one.
to,
Okay. Article 21. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,762 for the purpose of purchasing one MSA Evolution 6000 Plus thermal imaging camera, fire department. I believe that allows them to go into a burning building and find people still alive and get them out of there in due time. Okay? Recommend?
I recommend.
Recommend, all right. 22, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,500 for the purpose of purchasing a 12-foot Zodiac C360 with aluminum hull and a trailer. Recommend?
I vote not to recommend.
I don't recommend this.
I don't recommend either. Interesting question. If
Not this year.
we don't recommend, oh, I guess the budget committee could still recommend.
we could.
Okay, so let's simply leave it in there.
And we may.
As is sure to be discussion, fire department has a brand new motor. I believe they could get a boat and trailer for less than this and still serve the need of making rescues on the lake. Article 23, the last one. And to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. Did I miss something?
Oh, I thought you were gonna recommend. We don't have to recommend it.
No, you don't.
Oh, okay, so wait a minute, I have a
Yep,
question.
fire away.
So, are you removing the data and equipment capital reserve? That one was initially
Oh, where'd that one
the
go?
$3,000?
I was just gonna ask the same thing, plus there's another one.
And then, yeah, the other one is
This
the,
one, is this the old one?
yeah, there's two. There's one for $3,000 for data and equipment capital reserve fund, $3,000. And then the other one is the $5,000 for the highway department vehicle capital
Oh,
reserve
that's
fund,
right.
$5,000.
Yeah.
That's right, there is
Bam.
2 more.
May I borrow yours, please?
Said list is incomplete.
So,
Got it. All right, here's another one. Pick any number you want, we'll have to put these in order. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of
Thank you,
$3,000
Roxanne.
to be added to the data and equipment capital reserve fund.
yes.
I recommend it.
I recommend. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be added to the highway department vehicle capital reserve fund. That's different than the building. This is eventually buy another truck or something. I recommend.
Recommend.
Okay.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that
This
it?
is something as we were going
This
Oops,
is
along.
why we
sorry.
needed a help
You want mine,
person, cause I'm
original
missing
copy, or
stuff.
you all right?
Nope, I get this one, this is one, because
Okay.
Laura will give me a new updated one.
You all right?
I will, that'll be
Yeah,
good.
good.
Okay.
So after all that, nothing's being changed, huh?
Okay. As Jack Savage, the moderator, will tell you folks, on the actual day of the vote, on Saturday, there are certain things you can suggest an amendment for, amount of money, up or down. But you cannot vote an amendment that changes the intent of the warrant article. I'll make one up. You want to spend $30,000 for a new police cruiser. You cannot amend that to say $30,000 for a new dump truck. All right, you cannot change the intent of it, but the amount can be changed. The whole thing could be just defeated. That's the will of the people. All right. Okay. Now, some old business. You ready? Jim Keegan, concern follow-up. Anybody want to talk? Want me to talk?
You're free, you're free.
Thank you, I'm out.
You're good.
Thank you.
There was concern about the digging going on at the building behind the town's property.
Behind the Keegan compound?
Right,
Keegan compound.
okay. It was checked out by our code enforcement officer, and we have subsequently received a letter concerning all this, dated January 15th. Have you received the letter? In regard to the Tufts property on Hollow Road, we know it is Route 153.
Back in the day.
Due to the fact that a lack of owner's signatures for a replacement septic system resulted in a delay of getting approval and installation of said system, a solution to preventing New Hampshire DES from having to issue any fines or further enforcement action was discussed and agreed upon. Through this discussion and verbal agreement with NHDS, it was determined that removal of any water source to the garage in question would remove any and all requirements by DES for the installation of a septic system. Therefore, on January 14th, 2019, the signer of this, Ed Brennan, dug up and removed a portion of the water line to the building on the direction of New Hampshire DES. This action will be verified by NHDS through a letter to Mr. Tufts and also to the town. Okay?
I can tell you DES was there on Tuesday.
And so the digging that was observed was not for a new septic, but rather to make sure there wasn't a septic, because they pulled the water line. Is that pretty accurate?
Well, the digging was to stop the current septic.
And they were
That's
successful.
my
in dig-
opinion.
Okay. But it's now, the water's been.
Understand, I have been threatened to be shot, so I don't go up
I
there.
understand that, yeah.
My understanding is the water lines have been pulled so that there's no water going in, so there can be no septic to
Right,
work.
okay.
And that's what I believe the letter from DES will say when, if and when it comes.
All right. This one's from Ed Brennan. You want a copy of this?
I'll certainly take a copy of that.
All right. Do you mind making a copy? So, but I guess I agree, if you have no water going into the building, you can't have a septic going out. Okay? On we go. Okay. Town liability for trespassing. What's up? Anything?
I didn't do nothing.
There is, I'll tell you what, there was some concerns expressed about town liability if an arrest was made for trespassing, no matter what it is. We don't take certain precautions.
Just a quick update without getting into all the details. It has to do with people that were,
I can put that together.
right, there is some question about to what extent you can arrest someone on what at the time was town property, okay?
Yeah. Well, there's been some developments since we've last talked on
Okay.
this, and so this may be surprising. I'm getting, honestly, there was some concern expressed about if we arrest somebody for trespassing, we book them, set a court date, and release them on their own cognizance. Anybody in particular, whether it's trespassing or whatever, release them on their own cognizance. Could we be liable for their safety and well-being? I had two opinions on these, and one of them was pretty high. One opinion was from Tom Velarde, who was the Stratford County District Attorney. He said, no, you would not be, with a caveat that anybody can sue anybody for anything. But if you're upholding the law and pursuing the law, if you took the perpetrator, the suspect, and took his shoes away and his coat and just threw him out in the snow, yeah, you would be. But if you took normal precautions and released them on their own cognizance, then you wouldn't be held liable. However, I got a legal opinion from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, which is a firm, and they pointed out to me that there is a statute, RSA 161-F:46 says, now this actually refers to adult abuse. It doesn't specifically say if you release a person on their own cognizance. Whether it says that an officer has to take precautions in terms of if it's adult abuse, to make sure that person is taken care of or is safe. If within 72 hours they have to notify the commissioner, health commissioner, all this kind of other stuff. If an arresting police officer, this is a quote from legal opinion, if an arresting police officer forms the opinion that releasing an individual on his own recognizance would likely result in the individual suffering bodily harm or injury, the officer should contact the welfare officer to see if the individual would qualify for local assistance, could be provided temporary housing and food vouchers. What was suggested to me, and the board hasn't discussed this, what we're going to do with this yet, because I just got this here Friday, and bring it up because I don't have time to do that. The other comment was if the arresting officer forms an opinion that due to a mental condition, the opinion of the officer is in danger to himself or others. The question is, if the officer does not feel that way, what happens? So then the officer should detain him under contract until contact is made with the community mental health situation, so forth, so on. Cites an RSA 135-C:27. I think we still have to further investigate this to make sure that we're on legal grounds. The suggestion by the Municipal Association and its legal representative suggested that what you might want to do is provide some system of contact either with the Board of Selectmen at 24/7 if something had to be done. The board hasn't even gone there, we haven't even discussed that. I think we need to further investigate this because I respect the Stratford County District Attorney highly in his recommendation. I know him personally, we had a nice conversation about this. He understood the situation but felt we were okay to release that person on their own cognizance if they were, in the opinion, safe. So
Okay.
this, we'll have to research this more, so it's up in the air as far as I'm concerned.
Two comments. First, thanks to you, John. Action has been taken on this property, so it's unlikely that anybody's going to be trespassing. No electricity down there. And second, Laura and Mr. Varga, thank you, because at some point soon, this will not be town property. That'll be your
It'll be my
headache.
headache.
But this action refers to
First read,
anybody,
I do something.
anybody trespassing or anybody committing an offense. Doesn't just say trespassing, I think it's any offense. If that person is arrested, that's the way I'm reading it. So I'm not an attorney, I can't answer any questions about that because I don't know, but we'll get a further legal opinion on that.
In the legal opinion of municipal association, which I often wonder if they're even licensed, you're trying to make the police officers then become doctors or psychiatrists. Are these guys mentally capable of being released?
You can talk to your legislature about why these are done.
But the RSA, I think, is more like
It's
if the
more-
person's in danger of going,
Right.
Right.
That's correct. And
which I agree with.
yes,
Right.
that is true. And that, again, it puts a tremendous amount of burden
On the
on the
police?
police to make those decisions. But you can thank your state legislature in Concord and the Senate and the Executive Council and the governor for putting these laws forth.
Of which you were part of
Yes, I was, but this one never came up
during your time.
during my time.
Of
That's
course.
correct. Okay.
All right, next item is cemetery laws. A brief explanation of where we're going with this. Go back, I think 2015, there was a law that said every town shall provide a public cemetery. With that in mind, we started up having a cemetery committee, Roger was on it, a couple other people have been on it. The town has gone so far as to set, I believe, $15,000 aside in a cemetery trust fund, right? Capital reserve fund. We've looked at sites. We've entered into an agreement with the town of Wakefield to provide burials for Middleton residents, even though the cemeteries in Wakefield is supposed to be just for Wakefield citizens. We have an agreement. But wait, the law has changed. You're no longer required to have a cemetery. Have one if you want, or if you wish, you could, not forced, you could go into an agreement with someone else. Okay? So, we're in a quandary. You'll notice on the warrant articles coming up in March, there's nothing said about doing anything with the cemetery. We need a year to figure this out.
And the laws
And I
change.
can tell you that the agreement with Wakefield is costing us $1,200 a year. Pine Grove Cemetery in Farmington, which is a private cemetery that operates in conjunction with the town of Farmington, is free. Anybody can be buried there, any of us.
Still have to pay the lot fee, but.
Right, but there's no $1,200 a year. I called the town of Milton, same result. It's a private cemetery for $1 a year. People in Milton have the right to be buried there, but anybody can be buried there if you pay for the lot fee. I've put a call into New Durham, but they haven't gotten back to me yet. So, I would hope that we do nothing for a year, and next year, if in fact we don't need to keep spending money for Wakefield, and if in fact you don't want a cemetery, then we could, I think it's a 2/3 vote, change the purpose of the capital reserve fund, all right? $15,000 sounds like a lot, but we've looked at a plot of land, it would be 100,000 to get the land ready for burials. So,
Roger's
got a year to
done
think
that.
about it. Roger? 5?
Yeah,
500,000.
500,000, okay? It's not simply dig a hole in the ground. Okay?
that's
There's
not
a lot
counting any
more to it.
equipment.
All right, okay? Yes,
When does the contract come, or do we have a term contract with Wakefield?
I think it's yearly.
It's an annual
It is,
contract.
yeah, it's annual.
When does that
When-
renew law?
When's the date? What,
Couple, 2000,
We did it in 16,
yeah, it was 2016.
right when we started. This says agreement is the 30th of November, but every day they'll bill us, I believe, in June.
So that law would have been effective more than likely 90 days afterward or immediately, whichever occurs first. So sometime after June, that law was probably put in effect.
All right, Janet?
So what would you repurpose that capital reserve for?
Well, that would be up to the will of the people. We could put it in another capital reserve fund. Okay.
Or you could keep it and make it for the purpose of the burials, so
Right.
if there's anybody who have to.
Yeah.
I suppose you could have a John Mullen recreational fund, but.
Right.
See if we'd vote for that.
On any obligation.
Yeah, because
or anything.
technically, if you're gonna repurpose it, you would have to close it out and put the money into the unreserved.
Mhm. I think you can repurpose it.
But you'd have to put both warrant articles together.
Joanne?
If the contract comes up in November, and this subject is going to come up in the next March meeting, what are you doing in the interim between November and March?
Yeah.
Good question. I don't know.
That's a good question.
I'm not in favor of paying money for, you get it free in other places.
We may determine that we'll go with another agreement, say we're null and void here, we'll have, I would think we would have another one in place before the contract's terminated. We don't need town approval for that, we just sign a different contract.
You can terminate with a 6-month notice, or if you refuse to pay the dues to Wakefield within the 30 days of the due date, the agreement may be terminated by Wakefield within 10 days written notice. So if we just don't pay, they're gonna cancel it anyways.
I personally, when my time is ready, I personally want a plot with a view. I'd like to be able to look out and see the countryside. I don't know which cemetery is gonna offer that, but I'll check and see.
I'll have to go anywhere for that.
All right. One more item, folks, and we're about done. Non-resident use of Old
I would
Town.
like to postpone it to the next meeting.
Table,
Table.
all right, we're in agreement, all right. Anything else to come before us? You've been most patient sitting here for
one
an
more thing.
hour and a half, yes.
We have Solitude Lake Management Milfoil Treatment Contract.
Isn't that what we did?
Well, we didn't, no, this is the actual contract. Remember, there were questions, which Mr. Keegan asked, which was a good one, because in the contract, this is the contract with the firm that's going to do the herbicide.
The other one was for the grant.
No, we just did the grant with the state. This is the actual company that's gonna do it.
All right,
They've got
And-
the secret formula.
What's that?
They've got the secret formula.
They've got the secret formula. So, two questions were asked about, signing. I expressed concern to, the firm that the board was a little reluctant to sign the full contract, or sign the contract with not, having a full amount of.
Could have timed that better if I tried.
That's okay. I lost my train of
before the
thought.
March meeting. Signed before the March meeting.
Signed before the March meeting. I
Where does
have,
that go?
Oh, this new
and that was a great question, because right now in the capital reserve, we only have 10,000. The contract will probably come out to be about 12. And that was a prudent question by the board to ask that question, and then Mr. Keegan asked, because in the contract, it says, if further treatment, if it's determined after testing that further treatment needed to be done, I asked that, and it's hard to tell, but their treatment cost is about $734 per acre, less permitting, notification, sampling, and reporting, so figure $1,000 to do another treatment, so if we didn't have another treatment. If we're out of grant money, that's out of our fund. The thing is, though, the Conservation Commission, which really started the Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund years ago, has some resources in their capital reserve account around Conservation Commission. Just the Conservation Commission, not the Milfoil, but the Conservation Commission.
Oh, we don't have that.
I don't know where it is, but it's like $50,000. So,
Okay, conservation, 46,319.
what's that?
Just in conservation, as of December of last year, $46,319.
So it's around
Yeah, right
$50,000.
now it's right here, $48,080.
Yeah.
Just right here, conservation,
Okay,
because it's a loan.
On the
so
bottom of the
she's
sheet.
got an
it is.
updated one, okay.
So I haven't had a chance to connect up with the chairman, but I did talk to another member of the commission. If that person would be willing to expend some funds, at least like $3,000, to make up for the contract out of those funds, and I'll be recommending that the board do that, or that the commission do that, not the board. In other words, make up the difference, so that if our request, our warrant request fails to add additional funds to that we would have sufficient funds from the Conservation Commission to cover this treatment, so.
Can they legally do that, Sean?
Yeah.
Sure, we can.
Yeah, we can, we checked on that. Conservation Commission can expend funds on, conservation purposes on, as they see fit, okay?
That wasn't set up to purchase land or anything, was it?
That's
Not
one
that-
purpose, but
One purpose, not specifically for
Conservation
land,
Commission
no,
can,
no.
aid with other projects,
Yeah,
not
we-
just purchase
Yeah, we
land.
checked on that. So, we have a meeting February 11th, I think?
But Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
I am confused.
Oh,
It sounded as though you have to ask the Conservation Commission for them to spend their money. Are you saying that the town does not spend Conservation Commission money?
I think the commission would have to request that.
That's absolutely correct. It is not a vote of the town. You can vote, the town can vote to give money to them, but the members of the Conservation Commission are solely responsible for expending it.
Yeah, so,
Right.
in other words, it doesn't have to go before, it doesn't, it.
Right.
Doesn't have to.
Well,
go to
no,
town
well,
meeting.
the process would be simple, that the Conservation Commission would expend a sum of whatever they decide to do, that would send it to the Capital Reserve Milfoil Fund to cover the upcoming contract. And the reason we're doing that is the sooner we sign the contract here, the sooner they can do permitting. Now, I will tell the board, I didn't know this, but I did find out this recently. You can sign certain sections of the contract. For example, the most critical one is to try to get, they have a sum here of $1,490 that could be signed separately from the balance of the contract. This would cover for their special permitting that they have to submit to DES, the abutters that would be involved, and it says up to 80 abutters. That would be people along the lake where they're gonna treat. It wouldn't mean everywhere, just Pinkham Cove and around where it is on this map. Those would be the treatment areas. So I'm presuming, you never wanna assume, but I presume all the abutters around here and over here would be notified of the treatment, so forth and so on. So, would the board entertain signing just that contract, or would you prefer to wait for a decision by the conservation? I am 99% confident conservation will do that, but if you wanna wait, that's fine also. We meet the 11th. I don't think a couple of weeks would make any difference with the contract, according to the owner of the company.
I'm willing to wait. Good?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine, great. Okay,
All right,
I'm
more
done.
to come before us. Yes, sir.
I just want to pull back to the cemetery
Mhm.
thing. I'm looking at the statute, municipality to provide, every municipality shall provide or may enter into agreements with adjacent municipalities or nonprofit entities to provide one or more suitable cemeteries for interment of deceased persons, which shall be subject to regulations, et cetera, in line with what you're saying. But going back into the chapter, under definitions, cemetery means any cemetery owned, managed, or controlled by a municipality within the state, or owned and managed by any nonprofit cemetery corporation chartered by the state. Mausoleums and columbariums shall be included within the term cemetery. Now, we have a family mausoleum back across the pond, and what that is, it's one big giant tomb where they take and they lower all family members down into the same tomb. It's a giant encasement underground. columbariums, you may have seen, are where you take ashes and they get inserted into like little pigeon boxes. So that's an option, is what I'm getting at, rather than doing the full expanse of a $500,000 cemetery lot, as I read it. So just to bring it back a little bit, I think the intent is to, I've always understood the cemeteries is really for people who may not be of, monetary means, and the indigent.
If I
People that
may,
occur.
that was the feeling of the board, and I think originally that was the feeling of the cemetery commission, but if you read the statute, it doesn't specifically say what type of person,
Or circumstances.
persons, or their means is in there, it just says period.
So what I'm getting at, I don't think it specifically said it has to be a burial grounds.
Nope.
It can be a
It also
mausoleum.
says may, when you don't, if it doesn't say shall or will,
The definition of cemetery includes mausoleum and
Yep.
columbarium, so
Yep, whatever.
that's certainly an option for
Yep.
interment
yep,
in the community.
Yep.
It wouldn't make any, there'd be no options for, zombie night or walking of the dead, but.
Very good.
All right, yes.
So when is the hearing for filing for, say, budget committee members or any open position on the town?
Now till February 1st.
which is
And on
Friday.
that Friday,
Friday.
she's only here 3 to 5, which is my
Now
statute.
until February
This Friday.
1st.
This Friday.
Right,
That
okay.
goes for all officers
Okay.
That are elected.
that are
Other
elected, correct?
Positions are appointed, and those are done by the selectmen.
Okay. And she's here Friday, you said?
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I move we adjourn.
Well, any other business? Yes, sir.
I didn't get a chance to mention it. I wanted to mention about this recycle stuff.
Mhm.
Now, they're saying that we're not allowed to take our recycle down to Rochester to the dump. We're not, not
Who's
allowed
they,
to
sir?
do it.
Waste management.
Oh, waste management.
Waste management.
Okay.
Now, why wouldn't it be profitable to get a couple of big bins, one for cardboard and one for the glass and cans? Set it so everybody can go and put it in it. When it's full, call and have them come pick it up and replace it with another one.
So that's a mini transfer station, right?
Yes.
My view on that is, I'm not sure that we would have the resources to do that, because who's gonna manage that? If you leave it alone, we have enough trouble over here with the cans going in over there, trying to keep that clean and empty. Your idea is well worth it. I think the town went through the whole recycling situation. It didn't work out.
That's mainly because they said it wasn't enough to pick up.
Well, no, I think there wasn't enough, well, there was enough to pick up because it cost us almost, 25-30% more to do that than we are paying now. So, it was not well worth it. The other thing about recycling, unfortunately, is it's a commodity. Cardboard now is like dropped off the edge. You can't get rid of glass. One of the reasons for that is China doesn't take our recycled glass anymore. Plastic is there, aluminum cans are there, but I think we would, if we did that, where would we put it? Some have suggested put it down there. So how do we manage that? Who takes care of that? It's just, it would be, I think, a prohibitive thing at this point in time.
Why couldn't it be done at a certain day, like on a Friday or a Saturday, and a volunteer go down and watch it on them days, couple hours a day?
I don't,
You wanna volunteer?
I volunteer.
no, I
I'm
don't,
not, I'm not being smart as to say that, only because a lot of people have good intentions like that, and all of a sudden something comes up, and now it's not being managed and stuff like that, and people just go down, well, they're supposed to be in, they just toss it. You know?
Yeah,
We
but
don't
if
wanna see
you-
anything happen like that.
If you did that, if you set a time basis, we'll say like from 9 to 2, that you could bring it down in that period and put it in the waste bin. Something
then-
like that.
so then the point would be we would have to, I wouldn't want a volunteer down there to manage it, I would want a town employee, so we pay him. Then we'd have to figure out if the recycles that we get for the recycles, would that pay for that salary and the bin and everything else? And I don't know if it would or wouldn't, but I would guess that it would not.
I do know there's a bunch of, there are a lot of residents in town rehashing about recycling again. Then they're looking into, again, maybe pursuing it. Where it's at this point, I don't know.
Well, I've been taking my recycle down to Rochester, and I found out Saturday, when I went down there Saturday, the guy that runs with the recycles, he doesn't care, cause he gets to see the recycling. But the management of, waste management, he's up in a huff, he don't want nobody else to do it but them. But Rochester only.
That's their agreement though.
Now,
Yeah.
why can't there be an agreement made, okay, another situation, why can't another agreement be made that we get stickers in our windshield that we could go down there and do our recycling?
There is a possibility of that, but I can't say that that would happen or not, but that's something that could be looked at. I know they are reluctant to do that. Their deal on recycling for Rochester is special because they are on City of Rochester property. That's the agreement they have. But
Rochester doesn't pay for waste.
what's that?
Rochester doesn't pay for waste, I don't believe, because they are in Rochester.
Yeah,
land.
they don't pay
Therefore,
for
they
that.
encourage them to recycle because it offsets their
Correct,
costs.
correct. So I'm not poo-pooing that idea at all, but we haven't addressed that yet, but there could be an opportunity to do that. That's all.
I think it'd be a wise thing to do, cause I mean, there's a lot of people do like to recycle. And if we
I have
don't
to tell you,
recycle,
when we looked at it before, we spent some big money, and it's introductory cost, not knowing how much it does cost to do it. But, I think the number is right around $16,000, but we had, to make it work, we had to have 85% participation of all the, homes in town to make it justify doing it. We didn't have them 5%, and that cost us $40,000 to do it, so that's why it stopped.
Right now, it's a separate truck. With Waste Management, they can't use the same truck. Waste Management in other areas, other towns and cities across the country have trucks that go in the city that they trash and recycle.
yeah, I
But they don't
understand that.
have the trucks up here, and they're not gonna send them up here. So they have to send another crew up here or two to recycle.
That's why I was wondering about putting bins in it so they could bring the recycle in.
Well, we
Take
looked at
care
that,
of
we looked at that when we investigated we looked at a lot of things when, and I wasn't here, but you can relate to that. They looked at a lot of issues and scenarios in terms of how to recycle, make it easy. Bins, bags, pay as you go, don't pay as you go. And we tried to do it, I guess. I was not a recycler, but I started to recycle. I'll tell you what, I recycled everything. So,
And for a little history, we had the bin over at the highway garage years ago. And everything was going good. A lot of us recycled, Saturdays come down, drop newspapers off, cans, whatever. But then we got into a situation which found out some summer people would come and then they would take and dispose their trash into the bin. Our highway crew had to then separate it out. It was not exactly a joyous task for them because that's not something that they really want to do. They got frustrated and it kind of came to an end. So there's definitely, people want to do it in the community. But I think John already hit it. It's the commodity. There's been so much recycling. The commodity prices have just plummeted. And
Oh.
the valuation
Right.
isn't there. So the thing I can only suggest is understanding the history of it would be to settle it bin. However, that would need to be under a video surveillance. In this day and age, video surveillance does not cost a whole lot. And you can see the people putting in whatever's going into the bin. That's the only way I would see
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Nothing else, anybody? Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and 819er. Thank you for
As an
coming.
aside,
You guys vote me up to say a second?
when they did the recycling